When's the last time you really listened to your body? I'm not talking about when it screamed at you for eating that third donut or maybe drinking too much coffee. I mean truly tuned in to what it's feeling, what it's needing, and what it's trying to say. Today, we are getting into that magical space where the mind meets the body. And I have got the perfect guide. My guest is a doctor of physical therapy and a running coach who knows a lot about the workings of the human body. And more importantly, she helps other people find their way back to their bodies after injury, burnout, or years of just ignoring the signs. Wait till you hear her story about her husband's remarkable journey. We are talking about your body as basically your built-in truth detector, if you're willing to listen to it. So if you have chronic injuries, maybe some recurring pain, you got to know that there is a root cause and your body is trying to get your attention. Trauma, beliefs, past experiences, they all live in your tissues. Whether you are a seasoned athlete or maybe someone who's been avoiding the gym since the 9th grade, this is a conversation for you. And it starts now. Welcome to Shift or Get Off the Pot, the podcast that helps you get out of your head and into action so you can make your dreams your reality. Let's get to it. Welcome to the second episode in the series on the psychology behind peak performance. Today, we are talking all about the very powerful but sometimes overlooked connection between the human mind and the physical body. And with me is someone who truly understands this intersection between mindset and movement. She is a doctor of physical therapy. She is a running coach. She is the founder of Real Life Runners, and she has over 18 years of clinical experience. She has helped thousands of runners to unlock both their mental and their physical potential. And she's adept at really blending science and soul. And today we are going to be talking all about the human mind's ability to either limit us or launch us forward, and how tuning into your body can be the key to peak performance, because your body is always talking to you. So today, Dr. Angie Brown joins me to help us understand just what our body is trying to tell us. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you.
I'm glad to have you here because I want to get into the physical aspect. We've talked a lot on this show about the mindset and the mental thoughts and how those are controlling everything. And certainly nowadays, we hear a lot about the mind-body connection. You know, it's kind of like this phrase, and we've known about it for years, but now obviously with social media, you hear more and more about it. But I don't know that people truly understand just how important that is. And other than just positive thoughts, what really is the role that the mind is playing on our physical bodies?
Oh, it goes so much further beyond positive thoughts. The mind is really controlling everything that we do. And when we look at the power that the mind has over the body, one of the first things I think that it's important to understand is that most of our quote unquote mind is subconscious. So we are only aware of about 5% of what's actually going on in our mind, in our brain, in our nervous system. And so when I think about the mind, there's people that talk about the mind, there's people that talk about the brain. I like to look at it as our nervous system, because our nervous system is really what controls everything that's happening in our body. It controls how we move, how we perform, the results that we're getting or not getting. And so it plays a critical role in our performance in all aspects, not just the way that we're thinking about things, not just the way that whether or not we're thinking positive or negative. The way that you're thinking and the thoughts that you have control the actions that you then take or don't take, which then give you the results that you either have or do not have in your life.
Okay, and when you talk about this, when it comes to the body, right? And you work with athletes, you've been working with runners, and as a physical therapist, certainly understanding muscle and ligaments and fascia and all of that. But when you look at the physical body and you're trying to help somebody heal, do you also then start to go into, okay, let's look at what's been happening in your life? Is there some kind of stress or trauma that's been playing out that maybe you're holding on to that you see settling in the body?
Yes. And I think that it's something that we don't really talk about enough, to be honest with you. I think that it's definitely not something that I learned much about in physical therapy school. Granted, that was 18 years ago, like you mentioned. So I'm hoping that PT education has evolved more and that they are talking more about this. But this is something that I really started to dig into early on in my years as a physical therapist. And, as we kind of get into the trajectory of my career, I can tell you more about how I dove even deeper into this area. But really, the mind and our stress and our experiences, all of those things play a huge role in how our body responds in all different ways, how we feel physically. And like you mentioned, some of the trauma or the stress that we hold in our body. And a very easy example that pretty much all of your listeners could probably identify with is when you feel stressed, where do you feel it in your body? A lot of people feel tightness in their shoulders, or they feel it in the back of their neck, or sometimes they feel tightness across their chest, or some people have GI and stomach discomfort, or that unsettling feeling when they feel anxious or when they feel stressed. And so that right there shows you this link between the mind and the body. It shows you that some of the things that are going on in our brain, in our mind, can have an actual physical effect in the body. So to answer your question, yes, I personally, that is the way that I like to approach all of my clients, is to look at them in a very holistic way and not just say, okay, physically or physiologically, what's going on here, but also how is the rest of your life playing into all of this? How is the stress that this person is experiencing in his or her life contributing to this? The nutrition, the sleep, there's so many other factors that affect how our body responds and how we feel in our physical bodies. And so I think it's absolutely essential to look at all of those pieces if I really think that I'm going to do a good job helping my patient or my clients.
As you're speaking, you're reminding me of it was actually an interview that I did, and I was listening to this woman talk, and it was all about, yes, the mindset and certain things that can show up in our body. But what she hadn't realized is that she kept hearing, she had so much pain in her shoulders and neck, but it was because she finally traced it back to understanding that growing up, she kept hearing her dad say something about it's on our backs that those people get to do what they do, because we're carrying all their burdens in the work that we do. And she never correlated any of that. We were talking about other aspects of health and fitness, but it's interesting because you're saying that, and I'm recalling that thinking, oh my gosh, no wonder why she had so much pain around her shoulders and her upper back, because that becomes very real. And I don't think we realize just how real that is.
Yeah, I agree. There's one patient story that I often tell that I will never forget. This woman came into my clinic for an evaluation for lower back pain. And when I was talking to her, I was asking her about her pain, how long she's had it, how severe it was. And she told me it was an 11 out of 10. We use a pain scale. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is your pain? And she told me it was an 11 out of 10. She was in excruciating pain all of the time. And so I was trying to kind of dig into this, because whenever someone has a very exaggerated pain level like that, especially if they are not missing a limb, right? If they're able to sit there and have a conversation with me, there's something else going on. There's some sort of emotional or psychological component. And I've learned that, very quickly in my PT practice. So I put her on the examination table and I started to do my physical examination to examine her spine and her tissues and her muscles and kind of see what was going on. And as I was using my hands on her back and kind of trying to get in and assess the tissue and kind of feel what was possibly going on physically, I just kept asking her questions, and she was just starting to tell me different stories. And like you said, I was asking about her life and her stress levels and other things. And one of the things that she shared with me was that there was a very close person in her life, someone that was very close to her, who betrayed her. And she started telling me this story about this betrayal. And as I'm kind of assessing her and doing a little bit of manual work on her, she continues to tell me this story, and she's crying and releasing a lot of things. And then when she sat up, I said, "How do you feel now?" And she looked at me with the biggest eyes and said, "I don't have any pain anymore." And I thought to myself, well, I know I'm good, but I'm not that good. Like that, there's no way that what I just did to this woman took her from an 11 out of 10 to a 0 out of 10 physically, right?
Yeah.
But that to me was such an obvious connection of this burden that she had been carrying, this betrayal that was so entrenched in her tissues. And just by expressing that, she was able to let it go. And then her pain seemingly miraculously disappeared, right? Like there was other stuff that, and she came in for some treatment after that, but that was just such a clear example of that connection to me.
That's powerful. It's fascinating because that is a great example of just how quickly that our bodies can heal when we really pay attention to them. And that's what I think is so fascinating, because I think so often we're just like, okay, I just got to take a pill for this and help get rid of, well, put a Band-Aid on the pain, rather than addressing the root cause. And there's always something that's behind it. There's always got to be something that's behind it, because it just doesn't, you know, I mean, unless you're in a major accident or something, and I get some of that and the trauma and the things that, you know, start to affect our body. But when you start to get pain, that's different than a soreness, you know, from maybe overworking, working out too hard, running too hard. But there's got to be something else behind it. Like I'm always looking at it going, okay, wait a minute. Where did this actually come from? How come all of a sudden I'm feeling this and I didn't before, and kind of going down this rabbit hole of, okay, let me journal this stuff out. I think that's fascinating though, because that is a great example of how quickly you can turn things around. So was that the thing that started you then to really start saying, okay, there's more to this. I got to really examine the mind-body connection here?
It was a couple of things. That was definitely one that definitely stands out in my mind. And to, you know, going back to your point too, about this pain versus soreness versus other things, and kind of starting to look at and start to ask what else is going on here and getting to this root cause of things. One of the things that often makes me think about this, because like you said, there's a difference between an acute injury and then chronic recurring injuries. And in my clinical opinion, any type of chronic recurring injury has some sort of mental, emotional, psychological tie to it. You know, running is a very repetitive, high impact sport. Runners get injured. Over 80% of runners will be injured at some point in their running career. But it's not just because of the physical impact of running. It's because of so much of what we tie to running and the beliefs and the thoughts that we think are important for us to hold as runners. So to go back to answer your question about kind of how I really got into this mind-body connection, and specifically with the nervous system, it was really through my husband. And back in 2017, so my husband has been a runner his whole life since he was 14, ran cross country in high school, went on to run Division I cross country in college, is a very good runner. And after college, kind of was trying to figure out what to do next with his running. He knew he loved running, but he wasn't running competitively on a team anymore. So he started to get into marathons, and then we had kids, and, you know, life got in the way. And after our first kid was born, he started to get more serious about his training, and he started to train for half marathons and marathons, and he was doing really well with his training. And then we had kid number 2, right? And so now he's juggling 2 kids, staying up late, a crazy schedule. He's a high school teacher, so he's staying up late till midnight, grading papers, waking up to train, you know, at 5 a.m. to go out and run 10 miles. And it was a lot on his body. And if you look at him from the outside, it seemed like everything was working. It seemed like he was Superman. He was handling it well. And he actually even won a marathon, like one of our local marathons down here. He won first place. And so on paper, we were healthy. Things were good. It seemed like everything was going well. And then 6 weeks after that marathon win, I got a phone call that I'll never forget. And it was from the principal of his school. And he said, I saw his name come across my phone. I'm like, why is this guy calling me? And so I answered. And he said, Ange, everything's okay. But it seems that Kevin has had a seizure. And I just remember my heart sinking because it made no sense. He had no history of any sort of health issues or anything that we really knew of. And I couldn't believe it. I was in complete disbelief. Like, how could this even be? 6 weeks ago, he just won a marathon. He is in the peak health right now that we could see. But clearly something was off. And so he went and had tests done. All of the tests came back normal. He had the brain scans and the blood work, and they couldn't really find reasons. And so the doctor said, okay, well, just sometimes this happens, which I couldn't believe they said that. Even as a medical practitioner myself, I didn't know that seizures were this common. Apparently, about 30% of people will have a seizure at some point in their life. And so sometimes it's just a one-off thing. So you can just kind of go back to normal life. He wasn't allowed to drive for 6 months after that seizure. But he could go back to training and to doing things the way that he was doing them. It was what the neurologists told us at the beginning. And so we took them at their word and we said, okay. And I still thought it was very strange. And so I kind of started doing research at that point. I started to kind of look at things a little bit different and try to understand the brain and brain health more. And then 4 months later, he had a second seizure. And then 4 months after that, he had a third seizure. And that third seizure was here at home. The other two were at school. The third seizure was here at home in front of our daughters. And it was a full-on grand mal seizure. He is on the floor shaking. I ran into the room. There was blood everywhere because he had hit his head on the bookcase as he fell. And it was the scariest moment of my life. And it was after that. And again, during this year-long process that he was having these seizures, it was every 4 months. I knew something had to have been going on here. What in the world was happening? And that's really when I dove really, really deep into the nervous system and brain health and the science behind performance, really, and try to understand, like, how is it that he's able to perform at this level, like literally winning marathons, but clearly his nervous system is completely out of whack here. So that's really what springboarded me into this area of health and wellness.
Yeah, springboard it. Yeah, that's a light term for it. But
yes,
30%. Okay, a couple of things that you just mentioned. 30% of people will have a seizure. Like, I've never heard that stat before.
I hadn't either. I'm going to have to look that up and verify it, but that is what the doctor told us at the time.
And they don't know why? With somebody that doesn't even have any history?
Correct. Most of them, that statistic, that doctor was mentioning, that's what he said. He said that a lot of times we don't know the reason. Sometimes we can find something. Sometimes we can find some sort of imbalance in the blood or some sort of electrolyte balance or something that we can use to explain this. And then obviously there are those things like actual brain problems, tumors, and things like that can cause seizures as well. But there are a lot of people that have one-off seizures that they can't explain.
Interesting. And then your husband, okay, so Kevin could run the marathon. He doesn't have a seizure during the running at all.
Right.
And is there a way to explain that? Like, why I would think, man, you're pushing so much effort and the adrenaline and all of that. Why is it on maybe the downtime or the quiet time where your body goes into that?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I think that's still kind of one of those floating question marks that we have. I've got some theories, but to me, like when I started to really dive into this research and really understand nervous system health and look at the way that Kevin was living his life and all of the lifestyle factors outside of training that could potentially be playing some sort of role here, one of the things that I truly believe is the cause of his seizures, and obviously we can't say this with certainty, this is just my opinion, I think that it was chronic sleep deprivation over the course of decades, quite honestly, because Kevin, when we look at his habits and the way that he was living his life, he really didn't get enough sleep since his 20s, right? So like we're talking about 20s and 30s, let's see, 2017. So he was 36 when this series of seizures happened. But I think it just finally caught up to him or affected his brain, as it was developing in that way, that led to this. And one of the neurologists that we saw, who was an epileptologist, which means seizure specialist, basically what he explained to us was that every person has a seizure threshold. And some people have higher seizure thresholds than others. And this is why seizures are something that any person can actually experience if you reach your threshold. And some, we all have probably heard of febrile seizures, like a fever-induced seizure. Like it's one of the things that we, especially as parents, are very nervous about when those temperatures get up too high. So even people that have no brain issues or other issues can have seizures if the conditions in the body present in the right way. So basically, we all have a seizure threshold. It's just a matter between individuals of how high that is. And so he was basically telling Kevin that for him, his body was probably able to tolerate the, staying up late or the stress from school or the stress from family life. And then when he put the marathon training on top of all of that, that was like one of the things that could have pushed him over the edge. And so when we came home from that appointment, I remember Kevin saying, he told me I can't run. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. He did not say that. He was just trying to figure out like what could be causing this. And it's not just the running, it was the accumulation of all of this stress on your body and on your nervous system that finally put you over the edge that your body was not able to tolerate. So I agree with you. I think that it is kind of odd that it was during his rest and his more, like the down period after his training, like there had to have been some sort of like rebound effect that was going on with him that I can't really explain and don't have a great scientific answer to at this point in time. But I think it just kind of goes back to the nervous system and the load on the nervous system, and that accumulation over time really makes a difference in how our body is able to respond in all sorts of ways, not only just in our performance in sport or in career, but also in the rest of our life.
And you mentioned nervous system, and it's regulating the nervous system, and it might be that when your body, this is just a thought as you were talking about this, is that when your body is relaxed and finally able to slow down, it's almost like, oh, now I can allow myself to feel something. It's almost like, if you've ever gone on vacation and you get all geared up to go on vacation, and then it takes you like 3 days to finally relax. Because you're like, you've got all this stuff going and you finally get away. And then it's like, oh, I can't relax yet. And then you're like 3 days into the vacation where you finally go, oh, now I can settle down. And it just kind of reminds me of that. Like maybe that's it. Your body's like, hey, I'm so used to going that this adrenaline's taken over and I'm going. And now when I can sit down, then the body can finally say, hey, wait a minute, there's something going on here. I've been trying to send you signals. Yeah. And maybe you haven't heard it. And maybe, if you looked back on it, were you able to ever look at it and say, gosh, your body was giving you signs, Kevin, but we never recognized it sooner until you had the seizure?
Yeah. And I think that is part of what led it to get to that point, because those little things that runners often experience are the physical aches and pains that pop up. And with my knowledge as a physical therapist, whenever those little aches and pains popped up, I'd give him some exercises to do and we'd fix the pain, right? So it's not that he was completely 100% no problems up until this point, but we would just fix those problems. But I think that those were the little pebbles and the little signs that his body was sending, that then we would fix it and we would move on. We would fix it and then we would move on. And then we really apparently needed a boulder to be thrown at us for him to really recognize what was happening, and how he really was clearly burnt out in a way that his nervous system was completely fried.
Yeah, burnt out, not just physically though, but mentally burnt out as well, and not realizing it. And I think that happens to so many of us, and not just if we're not just being an athlete, but that you get burned out and you don't realize it. It is you're speaking about that. I had an experience when, I was pregnant with my fourth, and I had my third child had chronic ear infection. So she was up all the time. I'd put everybody to bed, and at 11 o'clock, she'd be up. And we'd be awake from 11 to 4. And I was on this cycle for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I didn't realize it until one night I just get busy during the day doing everything. And then one night I'm rocking her to put her to sleep and put her down to bed. And all of a sudden I get all these images in my eyes, and I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? It was a visual migraine, but I had a very good ophthalmologist somebody introduced me to that's had 5 children, and his wife had gone through the same thing, and he said, you got to get sleep, and it's your body depleting itself. And had I not known that, I don't know where I would have gone with that. There could have been so many other things that could have happened after that, but I think it made me start really paying attention to the signals my body was giving me. So I could say, oh, wait a minute, I gotta figure out what's going on here. Even something simple like a sore throat, and saying, okay, what am I holding on to here? Is there anger here? Am I not expressing myself? Like little things like that I think are so important that we just don't realize. And then it festers in the body. And like you said, this woman came to you, and as she started talking about her past experiences, wow, things started to shift.
Yeah,
and it can shift quickly.
And I think it can shift quickly. And I think like you said, I think that so many people have these things and then don't even realize that they are experiencing these things, because it's just normal. And for so many of us, we are taught that, I shouldn't say we're taught, but we are used to our nervous system being dysregulated. We feel this constant need, especially as high performers, right? We feel this constant need to feel productive and prove ourselves, and to always be doing things, always be in action. And we don't recognize how dysregulating and how dysregulated that is, and how a lot of people, I think, are walking around either in pain or in less than optimal health, and they don't even realize it because they don't know what it feels like to actually feel good, right? And when they actually do regulate their nervous system and kind of start to feel what better health feels like, they have this realization of, oh my gosh, I've been living decades feeling this way, thinking that this was just normal, when in reality, it was totally not normal, and I could have been feeling way better.
Well, and I also think we tell ourselves, because of society and, conditioning and such, that it's like, oh, that's just part of the normal aging process. When you can look at 2 people and say they're completely different, maybe the same age, but their life, their energy level, everything is completely different. So you have to say, I question that. I'll look at that and say, what do you mean? Like I can go out and run 3 to 5 miles and I feel fine. But I've trained and I've done certain things, and I have friends that are saying, there's no way, I can't believe you can still do that. And be like, it is a matter of mindset. And then on the flip side of that, I have friends that can do far more. And I'm like, wow, okay, I aspire to be doing that as well. When you work with people, because you work primarily with women over 40, right?
I do.
What are some of the things that you help them with? Like, how do you help them to really, I guess, keep their energy levels high and keep their bodies in condition? What are some of the ways that you help them? And also preventing injuries too.
Basically, what I've come up with is a 4-ingredient system, or a 4-step system, because it's important for us, again, to look at the person very holistically. So as a physical therapist, I know the body, I know movement, I understand all of that. But a lot of the pieces that we weren't taught in PT school, and really, it's not even just that we weren't taught them, but some of the things like nutrition and lifestyle and those kinds of things are things that are quote unquote outside my area of practice. So if we look at certain state practice acts, I am not a registered dietitian, so I cannot do nutrition counseling as a physical therapist, right? However, a person's nutrition has a huge role in how their body feels physically. If someone is under fueling and not giving their body the proper nutrients, they're going to be much more likely to get injured. So I think that it's extremely important for us to take this whole person approach towards anybody that I help. And that's really what kind of has gotten me a little bit more away from traditional physical therapy and more into health and wellness, because when we can help people in a more holistic way, my goal is to keep them out of the PT clinic and out of the doctor's offices and out of the hospitals and allow them to live a strong and healthy and vibrant, active life without having to go to seek medical attention. So some of the things that I work with, like there's 4 main areas that I focus on. The first is, of course, mindset, if you want to call it that, but really understanding how our thoughts and our beliefs shape our actions and shape the way that we show up, what we believe about ourselves, what we believe about training, what we believe about aging plays a huge role in the things that we do or not do, right? If you're someone that believes that, well, after 40, I'm going to slow down and there's this decline that happens and I can't do as much because if I push myself too hard, I'm just going to break my joints down. Like when we have those ideas about aging or about running or about physical exercise, we're probably not going to be as likely to go out and do those hard things. And then if we don't do those hard things, then our body is going to continue to get weaker and decline. So it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. So I always start with like figuring out and starting to get to the core of like, what do you actually believe here? A, bringing that awareness. And then B, what do you want to believe? You know, if you had the choice, what would you want to believe about your body as you get older? You know, and really helping women shift into this idea of building strength, and instead of just focusing on losing weight and those things that we've been taught as women to focus on as valuable, focusing more and shifting our attention more to building muscle, building stronger bodies, thinking about what our bodies are able to do versus just how we look. So that's really the first ingredient that I think is critical before we move on to any of the other more quote unquote action oriented types of things. The second thing I focus on is really building strength and really helping women understand, especially after 40, the importance of muscle in our body and how muscle really is the thing that we need to be focusing on building. And running, especially as a high impact repetitive sport, can break your muscle down if you're overdoing it, if you're pushing too hard every day, if you're running too much and not giving your body the appropriate level of recovery. So really helping them understand how to train in a way that is going to support building a stronger body versus breaking them down, and really helping to prevent running injuries along the way there too. So we talk about strength training, we talk about mobility, we talk about developing more power as runners. And then area number 3 that I like to focus on is that nutrition, really helping them understand metabolism, because when we think about metabolism, oftentimes people think about losing weight and slowing metabolism or trying to speed it up. But metabolism is really our body's energy system. It's really the way that our body converts food to energy and our body's efficiency at producing energy so that we can do the things that we want to do. And after 40, those things do tend to change because of the hormone shifts that we experience. And so really helping women connect to themselves in a way that they understand, okay, I need to fuel my body in a way that is giving me the necessary energy to achieve the things that I want to achieve, to do the training, to get the results, to run faster, to run longer, whatever it is that they want to accomplish. It's very important that they understand how to fuel their body appropriately, and then also how to fuel their body to build that muscle that we were talking about in ingredient number 2. And then the fourth piece is regulating your stress response and understanding the role that stress plays on the body, because there's good stress and bad stress. I hate calling them good and bad, but we'll call them productive levels of stress and then unproductive levels of stress. And when we have productive levels of stress, like that's one of the things that we do with training. Like the reason that we go out and exercise is to place stress on the body. And then hopefully our body adapts to that stress and then we get stronger. This is how we improve performance. We have to place stress on the body for that to happen. However, if we don't allow enough rest and recovery after that stress is applied, then our body is just continuously breaking itself down and doesn't have the time or the ability to build back up stronger, because it's during training that our body's actually breaking down, and during rest and recovery is when our body actually builds back stronger than it was. So I really help them understand the difference between stress adaptation and pure stress accumulation, because what a lot of people don't understand is that stress is stress. And I like to think of it, the analogy I like to use is like we all have a stress bucket, and all of the different areas of our lives all pour into the same bucket. So if you've got stress from exercise, if you've got stress from family, if you've got stress from career, all of it's going into the same bucket. All of it affects you and your nervous system and the way that your body is responding. So are you doing things like, is your bucket just constantly overflowing and overloaded? Because if you're trying to train and increase and improve your performance on an overloaded stress bucket, you're not going to get very far. So those are really the 4 areas that I like to address, and I'm happy to go into more detail in anything that you'd like to go into there.
I do actually, and it's your first point to start with, and that was, you said you asked people, what do they believe? And then you took them to, well, what do you want to believe? First of all, do most people, are they aware of what they believe? Are they aware of what those thoughts are? And are they clear on what they want to believe?
That is a fantastic question. The answer is probably not, to both of those questions. Most people, I would say, are probably not aware of what they currently believe or what they want to believe. And this is kind of going back to what I mentioned earlier about the fact that only 5% of our mind and our thoughts are on a conscious level. So 95% of our thoughts are unconscious or subconscious, which means outside of our conscious awareness. And oftentimes we have these thoughts and beliefs that are operating on a subconscious level. And I always like to ask my clients and use the question of what thought is driving the bus here. You know, like when you look at an action that you're doing in your life or an action that you're not doing in your life, what thought is driving the bus in that direction? Because there's something, and oftentimes we are not aware of them. But some of these things, I should say a lot of these things, have really been passed down to us over time. A lot of them have been given to us by diet culture and by the family that we grew up in. Kind of like what you were saying with that person that you were referring to earlier with the back pain, these things were built on the backs of us, like these little things that we don't even realize that we've taken on as thoughts or as belief systems that are truly driving the bus and figuring out people, because what happens is we hear them enough times and we just start to accept them as facts. We don't even realize or recognize that they're thoughts and that they're beliefs that we can choose, that we can change. We just think that they're facts. Well, of course, everybody believes this because that's true. When in reality, there's probably plenty of people that don't believe that. And there's probably plenty of evidence to show that that is not true, that there are other options here. So, I don't think that most people are aware, and they're not even aware that there are other options because these things are all happening on a subconscious level.
Yeah, at a subconscious level, and our mind records everything. Our subconscious records everything. So it's crazy that it can be so simple, and you can hear a statement a few times and all of a sudden, boom, it becomes ingrained in you. And the other point you brought up was that people need time to rest and recover. And what I've seen a lot, and this was partly just my upbringing too, was that busy, busy, busy. And so it's like running.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, let me go out and let me work out, but I'm going to work out every day of the week, or I'm going to run, and I'm going to run further and faster and longer, whatever it may be, without taking the time to say, wait a minute, my body needs time to rest and recover, because there can be almost a mental part of that where you feel guilty kind of taking that time off. Have you found that with some of the people that you work with?
Absolutely. Runners, the population that I work the most with, tend to be very type A driven individuals. They like numbers. They like seeing the results of the effort that they're putting in. And so many of us have been raised with this ideal of more is better. And if I want to get better at something, I just have to do more of it. I just have to push myself harder. If I'm not getting the results that I want, it's something going on with me. It means that I'm not doing enough. I'm not pushing hard enough. I'm not working hard enough. And so much of that, I mean, that's been passed down for generations and generations, right? So, yes, I definitely see that a lot. And when we have that mentality, and that's what so many people default to, it can really force us to ignore what our bodies are trying to tell us, ignore our body's need for rest and recovery. Because if we believe that more is better, and if we believe that I will get better results if I just push myself harder, we're not going to value rest and recovery. We're going to think, well, this is lazy. This is unproductive. This is a waste of my time, right? I could be out doing more. I could be out running. And that's where so many people fall into this trap. And this is one of the reasons I personally think that so many runners get injured. It's not just because of running. It's because we have it in our heads that running needs to feel hard to be effective, and that good runners push themselves hard on every single run, which is the opposite of what's true. Like most elite professional runners, the quote unquote best runners out there, do most of their training at an easy effort level. Most of their mileage is a very baseline, easy effort, conversational pace. They could go out and just run for hours and come home and be, okay, I'm kind of tired because I was out there for a long time, but effort wise, it was not that hard. Whereas most recreational runners, when they go out and run, are running somewhere like at a level like 7 out of 10, where the elites are running at like a 2 to 3 out of 10. That's a really big difference. And so when we're running and we're pushing harder and we're doing more, our body needs even more rest and recovery. So if we're thinking that recovery is not effective or it's not beneficial for us, we're literally just running ourselves into the ground.
It all truly does come back to mindset and understanding and believing that, number one, you can achieve what it is that you want to achieve, but you don't have to just really push and put yourself just through the grinder to try and get there, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's so important for us to understand that for any improvements or any strides that we want to make in life, whether it's physical performance or some other area, it's always a balance of stress and recovery. Like we need those times where we're pushing hard, where we're getting outside of our comfort zone, where we're doing things that challenge us. And then we also need the time to rest and recover and allow our bodies to adapt to it. So it's always a balance, and it's not 50-50. So don't get me wrong. You know, when I say there's a balance, that does not mean it's 50-50. Sometimes you need and this is where I think cycles and seasons come into play too, right? I think that as humans, we are very cyclical beings. We're very seasonal beings. And so there are going to be times in our life where it's going to be required or asked of us to push harder. And there are going to be times where maybe we don't get enough rest during that period of time, but that needs to be followed by maybe a time of more rest than normal, right? So we can sometimes get away with that for a short period of time, but when we start living our lives that way every single day and not recognize the need for rest and recovery, that's where we start to get into trouble.
So important. It took me a while to learn the rest and recovery bit, I'll be honest.
I'm
I'd be
still
like,
learning.
oh yeah, more's better. I want to go out and do that.
Right? Like I know because it's the easy default. Like because we oftentimes can see more, what's the word? Like we can see the fruits of our labor, right? For lack of a better term, versus like thinking that, not even realizing that it's actually the rest that's making you stronger. It's not the actual workout, not the actual training session, not some of those other things. It's actually taking time to pull back and rest and reflect. That's actually allowing you to move forward and to actually break through versus burnout.
So important. You know what? My boys, I have 2 girls and 2 boys, and my boys were really good at knowing that and understanding that and knowing that there was a need for that rest. Whereas, and I think this is true of a lot of women, it was more like, I can do anything. So I can do everything. And I'm just going to push.
Yes.
And it was a little harder for me to watch them and go, oh, my boys are college athletes. They've competed at very high levels. And yet they know the importance of resting. Whereas I was just like, boom, 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 push through. And I had to learn that, to just pull back a bit.
I agree. And I think that is a message that has been damaging for us as women. This idea of you can do it all. It sounds really good on paper, right? Like it sounds fantastic. It sounds very empowering. Like women can do anything, but that does not mean that women should do everything. And I think that that's part of the misinterpretation of that a lot of us women have experienced, is that we are told that we can do it. You can have a career and you can have a family and you can have it all, but it doesn't mean that you should be doing all of that at the same time. It doesn't mean that if you do have it all, that you're optimal in any of those areas, right?
Yeah.
And we're just expected to shoulder all of that, I think, as women. And when we start to feel these things, we just decide, okay, well, I'm just going to push through. I'm just going to keep going. My family needs me. Work needs me. I don't want to show weakness, because females, have been known in the past as the weaker sex, right? We don't want to play into that stereotype. So it's going to be even more like we have this feeling that we need to prove ourselves, I think, more so than men do.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a learned behavior and something that I think we all have to unlearn. If there's anything that you could leave people with today, like any one particular point, maybe about really this intersection between the mindset and movement, the physical movement, is there something that you would say to people that you think is important that they understand and take away from this?
I think that the big thing that I want people to take away is that all of it's connected, that we can't achieve peak physical performance unless your mindset and your nervous system are also on board. Or you might be able to do it for a short period of time, but that doesn't mean it's not going to catch up to you at some point, because your nervous system is truly controlling everything that's going on. And when we get to a point where we can marry these things, and when we can operate more with this regulated sense of understanding our bodies, of reconnecting to our bodies and what they need, and really starting to see the signs and the signals that your body is sending you. Because I think that this is one of the things that we get wrong a lot, especially in peak performance and high achievers, is we just ignore things a lot, right? We're just told to push through, and we ignore a lot of the things that our body's trying to tell us. And when we can get to a point where we are able to rebuild that trust with our body and reconnect the nervous system and physical performance and all of these different pieces, and the mindset and our thoughts and our beliefs, when we can get to that place, we can adapt. And adaptation means that we can grow. And it's more about then allowing those things to happen versus just trying to force them to happen, which is what I think a lot of people are trying to do. They're trying to action their way into things. They're trying to force their way into things. But when you can get to a place where you can understand the connection and you can understand the power that your thoughts and your mindset have over your physical body, that's when you now have basically all of the power back, that you can understand, okay, sometimes it's good for me to push, and sometimes it's better for me to just pull back and allow my body to rest.
Beautiful. I love it. It's adaptation enables us to grow. I love that. And we can now allow things and get into that flow state rather than pushing and pushing and pushing so hard. Thank you so much for being here today. I just love exploring the physical aspect and how things play out for us, our minds, our thoughts, everything, how it actually affects us physically, and taking a look at it, especially from someone that is a doctor of physical therapy that can really help us understand how it's showing up in the body. So thanks so much for being here. I know that you have a program for people, and we will link that down below. So if anybody, will put all your information and how people can connect with you. And also if they want to work with you a little bit further, we'll put that link down below to your program so that they can work more with you. Thanks so much for joining me here today. If you want some help achieving your goals, you can grab the Success Bundle link down below, or head over to my website, KimKelleyThompson.com, where I have several free resources to help you. If you like what you've heard today, please consider hitting that subscribe button and join me throughout the week for episodes that will help you make your dreams your reality. I'll be back again soon with another edition of Shift or Get Off the Pot.